I'm Ryan O'Dowd, and you're listening to Ryan's Audiobooks on the Issues Magazine YouTube channel. Today we continue with Section 6.8, Prometheus Rising, by Robert Anton Wilson. We're picking up in the middle of Chapter 4, the Anal Emotional Territorial Circuit. Imprinting affects the whole nervous system. The nervous system affects the whole body. The second emotional territorial circuit creates a two-dimensional social space in conjunction with first circuit and advance or retreat. Submission. The grid of circuits 1 and 2 creates 4 quadrants. Note that hostile strength, the tyrant, is inclined to paranoid withdrawal. He must govern, but he is also afraid. Consider the careers of Hitler, Stalin, Howard Hughes, etc., and the inaccessible castle and court in Kafka's allegories. Note also that the dependent neurotic is not in retreat at all. He or she advances upon you, demanding fulfillment of emotional needs, imprints. These 4 quadrants have been known since the dawn of self-consciousness. For instance, in the terminology of the medieval psychology of humors, these 4 imprint types are known as bilious humor, hostile strength, sanguinary humor, friendly strength, choleric humor, hostile weakness, and phlegmatic humor, friendly weakness. Likewise, the sanguinary type, friendly strength, was identified with the lion archetype and the element fire. The lion, because of the dignity of these big cats, represents good strength, and the fire represents power. The phlegmatic type, friendly weakness, was identified with the angel archetype and the element water. These people are too sensitive to fight and go with the flow. The choleric types were identified with the bull archetype, truculent suspicion and paranoia, and the element earth standing for the sluggish pseudo-stupidity. This is the traditional stance of defeated races dealing with their conquerors. The bilious types, hostile strength, were identified with the eagle archetype, the symbol of imperial Rome, the German royal family, etc., and the element air. Air probably means sky because these types seem high and mighty. These symbols go back a long way. Kabbalists find them in the Old Testament, where indeed the lion, angel, bull, eagle appear in Ezekiel. They are found constantly in Catholic art, associated with the 4 evangelists, Matthew Angel, Mark Lion, Luke Bull, John Eagle, and run all through the design of tarot card decks, medieval and modern. These are the 4 old men in Finnegan's Wake. Matt Gregory, because his last name contains ego, equals the angel. Marcus Lyons equals the lion. Luke Tarpey equals Tor, the bull. Johnny McDougall equals Oogle, the eagle. In the clever language of the fashionable transactional analysis system, these 4 imprint types are categorized as the 4 basic life scripts, to wit: bilious or hostile strength, I'm okay, you're not okay. Sanguinary friendly strength, I'm okay, you're okay. Choleric hostile weakness, I'm not okay, you're not okay. Phlegmatic friendly weakness, I'm not okay, you're okay. It's the phlegmatic, friendly weakness, dependent neurotic type, who generally turns up in the psychotherapist's office seeking re-imprinting voluntarily. They are not okay, but they have great faith that the therapist is okay. The bilious, hostile strength, and choleric, hostile weakness arrive in therapy, if at all, only because their associates or families, or more importantly, a law court, has ordered them to try to re-imprint their compulsive hostilities. The sanguinary, friendly strength type virtually never comes for psychotherapy. He or she is satisfied with his or her life, and so is the rest of society. Last, they nonetheless can get to the position where they need therapy of some sort, simply because they may take on too much responsibility and carry too many burdens. They will generally arrive at the therapist only if sent there by an MD who has intuited where their ulcers came from. The system is not meant to be rigid or to imply that there are only 4 types of humanoid robots. The later circuits, still to be discussed, modify all these considerably. Some imprints are wobbly, cover 2 or more quadrants partly, and we are all capable of sudden brain change. It's also important to realize that the 4 archetypes are for convenience only, and they are convenient as witness their reappearance in transactional analysis, where their historical connection with lion, angel, bull, eagle isn't even recognized. But each quadrant can be subdivided much more sharply if necessary for diagnostic purposes. For instance, an influential psychological test in this country, the Leary interpersonal grid, divides the 4 quadrants into 16 subquadrants, and allows one to grade each in terms of moderate to excessive tendency to behave that way. In the grid on which the Leary categories are known, the moderate imprints are in toward the center, and the excessive or extreme cases are out towards the perimeter. But what is being measured is still basically the way the first 2 circuits, oral, biosurvival, and anal territorial, are imprinted. To clarify this a bit further, imagine that 4 babies were all born at the same instant in John J. Boskowitz Memorial Hospital, Anytown, planet Earth. We come back 20 years later and we find that each of them has a separate personality and lifestyle, a problem for the astrologers, but let that pass. To make things easier for us, they have actually landed in our 4 quadrants. Subject 1 is responsible over conventional, sanguinary. Everybody agrees that she or he is usually a beloved community leader, helpful, considerate, friendly, and solidly successful. Some may even say she spoils people with kindness, forgives anything, agrees with everybody, and actually enjoys governing those who cannot govern themselves, the noble lion. This person may be and probably is a total robot. That is, if she can never give orders in a strict way, is never able to doubt others, is never ego-centered, etc., then she has mechanically imprinted the first quadrant, friendly strength. On the other hand, if she is able to move out of the first quadrant in appropriate situations, exercising hostility against the marauder or predator, admitting weakness when overwhelmed, she has an imprinted conditioned predilection for I'm okay, you're okay, but is not totally roboticized by it. Subject 2 has, after the same 20 years of imprinting and conditioning, landed in quadrant 2, friendly weakness. She's self-critical, shy, timid, easily led, spineless, and always looking for somebody to take charge and give orders. The unearthly angel, or in modern symbolism, the flower child. Again, this imprinting conditioning may be totally robotic, or there may be enough flexibility for the person to jump to another quadrant when necessary. Subject 3 has landed with total robothood, or with some small flexibility in quadrant 3. Hostile weakness, choleric. She distrusts everybody, rebels against everything, speaks constantly in sarcasms, complains chronically, and is generally bitter, resentful, and to some extent paranoid. The sullen bull. Subject 4 has landed in quadrant 4, hostile strength, bilious, and is regarded as bossy, cold, unfeeling, dictatorial, self-important, boastful, etc., but still in the judgment of most a good leader, the imperial eagle. The irony and the tragedy of human life is that none of these subjects are aware of their robotry. Each will explain to you at great length and with great conviction why each of these robotic, endlessly repeated reflexes are caused by the situations around them, i.e., by the bad behavior of other people. What the thinker thinks, the prover proves. Thus, if you put these 4 primates on a desert island, you can predict with virtually as much certainty as a chemist telling us what will happen if 4 elements are compounded, that subject 1 and 4, friendly strength and hostile strength, will both try to take over. Number 1 to help the others, number 4 because she can't imagine anybody else in control. Number 1 will submit to number 4 because number 1 wants things to run smoothly for the good of all, and they never will run smoothly if number 4 is not top dog. Number 2, friendly weakness, will not care whether number 1 or number 4 rules, just so long as somebody else is making the decisions. And number 3 will complain and complain and complain, no matter who's in charge, while skillfully avoiding any action that would require taking personal responsibility. The same political decisions would be made by 4 chimpanzees or 4 dogs, if they have the 4 imprint quadrants equally divided as in our hypothetical example. Sociobiologists, who are very aware of these 4 quadrants in both human and animal societies, claim that each organism is born with a genetic predisposition to play one of these roles. Critics of sociobiology, who are dogmatic liberals, denounce this idea as monstrous. We will not attempt to decide that difficult question here, since any attempt to decide what aspects of behavior are genetic and what are learned after birth always descends into ideological metaphysics in the prevailing absence of real data. We say merely that, whether or not you or I were born with a predisposition for one quadrant, all organisms are born with a predisposition for imprint vulnerability, and the imprint, once set in the neural circuitry, acts as robotically as any genetic hardwiring. How imprints can be changed will be discussed as we proceed. The exercises in each chapter are intended to make imprints a little less rigid and a little more flexible. The top 2 quadrants of the Leary grid, friendly strength and hostile strength, correspond roughly to what Nietzsche called Heidenmoral, the ethics of the ruling classes. Indeed, Hostile strength is the embodiment of Nietzsche's blonde beast, the primitive conquer-pirate type we find at the dawn of every civilization. This is what Nietzsche would also call the animal or unsublimated form of the will to power. Friendly strength, on the other hand, does not correspond, except very slightly, to Nietzsche's sublimated will to power. To find that, we will have to wait until we come to the fifth neurosemantic circuit, the stage of conscious evolution. The bottom two quadrants, friendly weakness and hostile weakness, correspond to Nietzsche's Sklavmoral, the ethics of slaves, serfs and lower caste or lower class persons everywhere. Nietzsche's concept of resentment, the hidden revenge motive within altruistic philosophies, claims there's an element of hostility within even the friendly weakness side of the grid, i.e. in conventional Christian ethics, as typified by the image of gentle Jesus, meek and mild. This paradox, the friendly weakling is a hostile weakling in disguise. The flower child, the potential Mansonoid robot killer, reappears in modern clinical parlance as the concept of passive-aggressive. Occultists, in their strange jargon, describes these types as psychic vampires. This is why Nietzsche claimed that St. Paul had destroyed the evangel of Jesus and replaced it with the disangel, bad news. The evangel of Jesus, as Nietzsche saw it, was the sublimated will to power, the path of conscious evolution to superhumanity. The disangel, the bad news, created by St. Paul was traditional Sklavmoral. Slaves, obey your masters, but nourish your resentment with the firm belief that you are good and they are evil, and you will eventually have the pleasure of watching them burn in hell forever. In Nietzsche's analysis, all Marx added to this was the idea of burning and punishing the master class here and now, instead of waiting for God to attend to the matter post-mortem. The same analysis appears in E. E. Cummings' unforgettable couplet on the communist intelligentsia of the 1930s. Every comrade is a little bit of concentrated hate. It's interesting, in this connection, that Nietzsche dropped psychological language from his books as he went along and replaced it with physiological language. For instance, in his later works, such as The Antichrist, the resentment within slave morality, conventional Christianity, is diagnosed as a physiological reaction characteristic of certain physical types. Nietzsche was on the right track, but lacking neurology, he looked for the physical basis of these processes in genetics alone. Imprinting theory suggests, on the contrary, that such physiological bottom dog reflexes are created by specific triggers at early moments of imprint vulnerability. But they're nonetheless all over the body at once and hence physiological. Any method actor knows this, and his body will swell physically if he is playing a strong character and shrink if he's playing a weakling. Rod Steiger, in particular, actually seems taller or shorter depending on whether he is playing a top dog or bottom dog. Remember again that all these categories are for convenience, and that nature has not employed the sharp boundaries that we use in our models of nature. Thus, with Leary's 1957 schemata, we can further subdivide our 4 types into 16 types with 4 degrees each, for a total of 64 subtypes. In the next section, to simplify what may be growing too complex, we will reduce everything again just to the interactions of the first 2 circuits. Any system for describing human behavior should be flexible enough to be extended indefinitely, and should also still contain meaning when reduced back to its fundamentals. Since we all contain a territorial emotional circuit, we need to exercise it daily. Playing with children is one good exercise, especially if you play with large groups, in which case you will have to referee mammalian territorial disputes. Swimming, jogging, or whatever else appeals to you is good, to keep the muscles from feeling you are trying to starve them. Trying to psych out somebody else's emotional state is one of the best exercises for this circuit, and it's very educational in general. It activates the old mammal centers in the thalamus, where body language communicates emotional signals. A good general uses the circuit to psych out what the enemy general is planning. A good mother uses it, vice versa, to figure out what baby's howl means in each particular case. Advanced work with this circuit involving some hazards in personal relations would involve such games as learning to bully somebody, if you've never been able to do that before, learning to submit docilely, if you've never been able to do that before, and learning to express anger appropriately and letting go of it when it's no longer necessary. It will be observed by the thoughtful or visually oriented readers that each extreme type can be expressed on the Leary grid as a very off-center pie slice. Friendly strength, hostile weakness, friendly weakness. Obviously, an ideally balanced person, that is, one not roboticized and able to adjust to circumstances as they arise, would not be so off-centered. Such a person would be able to move a little bit into each quadrant according to the times and seasons, as the Chinese say, but would basically maintain a centered detachment between all of them. She or he could be graphed as a circle. The dark inner circle would represent the adamantine individuality of the ideally detached person, detached from robot imprints. The gray circle would represent the ability to move out into each quadrant in times when that was necessary. Circles of this sort, called mandalas, are widely used for meditation in the Buddhist tradition. Often they are cornered by four demons who, evidently, like the Occidental lion, bull, angel, and eagle, represent the extremes to be avoided. Being humus, the same returns. James Joyce, Finnegan Wake. Exercises. 1. Whenever you meet a young male or female, ask yourself consciously, if it came to hand-to-hand combat, could I beat him or her? Then try to determine how much of your behavior is based on unconsciously asking and answering that question via pre-verbal body language. 2. Get roaring drunk and pound the table, telling everybody in a loud voice just what dumb assholes they all are. Opiates in small doses of alcohol seem to trigger neurotransmitters characteristic of Circuit 1 breastfeed tranquility. Large doses of alcohol even reverse this and trigger neurotransmitters characteristic of territorial struggle. Note the anal vocabulary of hostile drunks as their alcoholic intake increases. 3. Get a book on meditation, practice for 2 15-minute sessions every day for a month, and then go see somebody who always manages to upset you or make you defensive. See if they can still press your territorial retreat buttons. A good book on meditation is Undoing Yourself with Energized Meditation and Other Devices by Christopher S. Hyatt, Ph.D. 4. Spend a weekend at an encounter group. During the first half day, try to intuit which quadrant each participant is coming from. At the end, see if any of them become less roboticized. See if you have become less roboticized. 5. Go to the lion house at the zoo. Study the lions until you feel you really understand their tunnel reality. 6. Rent a video of the kind of comedy that small children like. The Three Stooges, Abbott and Costello, etc. Observe carefully and think about what function this humor serves, but don't neglect to laugh at it yourself. 7. Spend all day Sunday looking at animal shows on TV, getting stoned on weed if this is permissible to you. Then go into the office the next day and observe the primate pack hierarchy carefully, like a scientist. Thus concludes section 6-8 of Prometheus Rising by Robert Anton Wilson. That was chapter 4, the anal emotional territorial circuit. Tomorrow we'll start with chapter 5, Dickens and Joyce, the two-circuit dialectic. Section 6-9. I will see you then. Alam.